Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shea Station podcast. No Zoom call today, which is nice and refreshing for me. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jack, aka Jolly. Joining me at my desk is Jerry Blevins, who is in New York, here to recap a Mets series win with me. Jerry, how you doing?
I'm happy to be here, I'll tell you that. This is a much better way to not only hang out with my friends, but to record a podcast.
I agree. And we didn't get a sweep this time, which is nice.
That does help.
Would have been a bummer.
Yeah, that would have been back-to-back bums.
So I was at Citi Field twice this weekend for the festivities. I have to brag a little bit.
Do it.
Mets fans were awesome this weekend. I need to find the guy who gave me my first ever free hot dog on the cold Saturday afternoon. He was such a nice guy. We had a nice 5-minute conversation as I was waiting in that hot dog line. And I didn't get his name. So if you're listening to this podcast, DM me. Let's talk about life.
So
again.
Did you get a free hot dog, or did he buy you a hot dog?
It was one of those situations where he was like, yeah, this one's on the house. And I kind of laughed it off, and then he was like, dressing it up. And then he handed it to me. And I was like, I had my card in my hand. He was like, no, this one's on the house. And I was like,
that's amazing.
Humanity is beautiful.
Did you take it and threw it on the ground?
That's what I think of a free hot dog. It was a great weekend. Mets. I was at the 2 wins, so I'm 2-0 this year. So they have to start sending me to every game, is what I learned. Mets look good, except for that last game, which we'll talk about. Francisco Alvarez is up with the club. A lot of exciting stuff there. I think we'll dive into this recap if you're down.
I'm ready.
Before we do, Jerry, you know who I got to tell you about?
I do know.
I got to tell you about DraftKings. The people who helped me win a nice parlay this weekend on my Kodai Senga parlay, so I'm really excited about that. Baseball season is in full swing, guys. Whether you're rooting for the home team or betting on your favorite player, DraftKings Sportsbook has got you covered on all the season's action. New customers can place a $5 pregame moneyline bet and get $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. Spread that bonus bet money on a same-game parlay like I did. I did Mets moneyline, Kodai Senga for 5 strikeouts. Nice, easy thing. Got me a couple extra bucks, and you can boost your winnings with each leg added up to 100%. Join the action now at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app and use code SHEA, S-H-E-A. New customers bet $5 on any pregame moneyline bet and get $150 in bonus bets if that bet cashes. Only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details, and any resources you might need for a gambling addiction or gambling problem are listed down below as always. Jerry, are you ready to hear me talk for like 4 more minutes?
This is the best part of my job, to listen to you.
Just kick back and drink your coffee, man.
Deal.
Hit that music that Jerry can hear now. Oh, it's nice. There it is. It was kind of a cold weekend because we canceled the game on the nicest day of the week for some reason, but the Mets got to play.
It was a perfect day. I was out in the city enjoying it. Continue.
Instead, we played on Friday in an overcast day, and the Mets looked good. They drew 7 walks through 2 2/3 innings pitched for that boated Marlins pitching staff that we always hear about, including a bases-loaded walk to Mark Canha. Vogelbach made it a 2-0 game with his first hit of the day, an RBI single in the third, stalling Marte homers in back-to-back Mets home openers to make it a 4-0 game in the 6th. Tylor Megill, he was the story in this one, and you know me, I was hooting and hollering in the crowd because that's my guy. 6 innings pitched, no earned runs, 3 strikeouts, no home runs on 88 pitches with 8 whiffs. He was great. He allowed a base runner in each of the first 4 innings, then tightened it up in the 5th and 6th, so we love that. The Mets got even more walks later on, 2 walks and a hit by pitch in the 7th, loaded the bases. They were able to tack on 2 more runs. The Marlins pitching staff had 12 walks in this game and a hit by pitch. 4 of those went to Brandon Nimmo. He had his first career 4-walk game. I loved it. Dennis Santana, he allowed the Marlins to creep back into the game a little bit with a 3-run homer to Garrett Cooper, who's becoming a new Mets killer. But the Mets put it away with home runs from Lindor and Alonso to make up the 3 runs and put the game out of reach. The Mets are now 11-4 in home openers at Citi Field. How about that? So they win game 1. They go into game 2. I'm there again. It's even colder than the day before somehow. And the first inning was similar to the game prior. A walk, a single, and a hit by pitch. Set up another bases-loaded walk, this time for Jeff McNeil. Pete Alonso, who's on a tear. He's got the major league lead for home runs right now with 5. He homers for the 2nd day in a row. It gives the Mets a 3-0 cushion in the 5th inning. The rest of the Mets team combined, 5 home runs. Pete Alonso by himself, 5 home runs. He's 6th all-time on the Mets home run list now, if you can believe that. Kodai Senga, though, he was the story in this start. He dominates the Marlins for the 2nd time in a row. 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, only the 1 home run allowed to Jazz Chisholm. He got 12 whiffs on that ghost fork. He looked great. Struck out the side in the 2nd inning. It was all Kodai Senga once again. Citi Field did a really nice job dressing up the ghost fork and using fun animations to get the crowd involved. And I even saw saw a Senga shirt in the crowd too, which was awesome. I've gone way over my time. Clearly, after getting robbed twice, Eduardo Escobar finally breaks out of his slump with a 2-run homer in the 7th. The Marlins rallied for 2, but the Mets bullpen was able to put it away behind John Curtis and David Robertson. Thank you very much, Jack, for re-rolling the music. As we get on to Game 3, the Mets are going for a sweep, and Francisco Alvarez is the story of this one. He finally gets a start in the final game of the series, and he gets the scoring started for the Mets with an RBI single in the 2nd, but that came after a Brian De La Cruz 3-run homer off Cookie Carrasco, who we're going to talk a lot about because it was once again not a great outing for him. 4 2/3 innings pitched, 6 earned runs allowed, 3 walks, 2 home runs, only 3 whiffs, and he did sit a little low on the velocity again. We'll be all over that. Starling Marte in the first inning doubled, stole third, and then had to exit the game with a strained neck. Hopefully he's just day to day. Steven Nagosic in kind of a blowout game saved the Mets bullpen with 3 1/3 innings, a career high 52 pitches. They'll be ready to go for the Padres tonight. The Mets got a base runner on in each of the first 6 innings of this game. They only scored twice. That was kind of the whole story, as the Marlins pitching were able to keep them at bay. They went hitless and walkless in the last 4 innings against the bullpen. They would lose this one 7-2, but they ultimately take the series against the Marlins, and they end up going 5-2 against them in their first 10 games. So that's all good stuff. The Mets get a series win in their first home series of the year.
I'd say it was a successful home opener
I think
series.
So too.
I really enjoyed Megill's performance.
Oh,
I thought he stepped up, and with undue pressure upon him because of how in flux the rotation has been.
Right.
Still the biggest question mark, something that came in as the reason for such high expectations. They've been like the shakiest part. But he's been great for 2 starts.
I mean, he was supposed to be the AAA opening starter.
Yep.
And instead he's got a 1 ERA in
Just
the big
filling
leagues.
in for Verlander, doing it admirably.
I mean, it's something worth talking about because we got a positive report on Verlander who said he expects to be back by the end of the month as like a worst case scenario. You got to start talking about who's going to get bumped because there's only going to be 5 spots. And I don't think the answer is as clear cut as it used to be.
I agree. I think that's a good segue before we get into the series, but I think that's something that we can touch upon after if you want to get into it, like how that makes up. Yeah, a little teaser. Look at this. We're veterans.
There's too much good stuff to talk about, though, before we get to all that conflicting stuff. One thing I want to say that's not related to any of the games, the Mets did a great job with the Edwin Diaz introduction. We were all kind of wondering, where's Edwin? Is he at home? Is he still rehabbing? They introduced the whole lineup, and then they said there's one more teammate we have to announce. He got to come out last to the trumpets. It was really touching. It was kind of like a really bittersweet moment because it was, the New York faithful cheering louder than they had for any other player for a guy that they were booing relentlessly, 3 years ago. So it was a nice moment.
Up until that, the loudest cheer. So this is one thing you always listen for when you're on the field.
Right.
The loudest cheer up until that point was like the executive sous chef that they announced. It was hilarious. I was like, oh, that's who killed it. But then Edwin Diaz got a roaring ovation, and it had a touch of like bittersweet melancholy to it. Right. It did for him too. It was heartwarming, but knowing that he's not capable of pitching, he's such a good guy. So it was nice to get a little bit of warmth and recognition from the crowd.
Definitely agree. It wouldn't have felt the same if he wasn't there. And it helped that the Mets offense came out and they won that game, especially scoring 9 runs after the poor showing they had in the Brewer series. But most of that was just, taking their walks and being patient.
Yeah. That's, again, this is what they do.
Yeah.
They did it great. There are some deeper concerns moving forward about that style of play because there's not every pitcher kind of does that.
Yeah.
But they did it against the Marlins again.
Yeah. And I mean, if, they're not going to throw you strikes, you got to take them. I understand that. I think it's really interesting that Brandon Nimmo, not off to a crazy good start to the year. He's only 5 for 26 to this point. Has 1 extra base hit. He has 10 walks on the season already, which leads the big leagues. So a 192 batting average, but a 421 on base, which I think is silly.
Yeah, I mean that's what you get in small sample sizes, but he's looked good at the plate.
Yeah.
He's taken good swings. That 1 extra base hit was a left on left.
Yeah.
Good slider that he went down in a pivotal point in the opening series. But I like what I've seen from a lot of the guys, especially Nimmo.
Yeah, let's talk about the pitching because there's 2 big outings we can jump to. Do you want to talk about Tyler or do you want to talk about Kodai?
Let's talk about Tyler real quick because we already touched upon it. He did great. He looked really good. it's still, let's see, I don't want to sound negative. I'm not being negative at
Sure.
all. He only had 3 strikeouts
Yeah.
in 6 innings pitched against the Marlins, but he pitched really well. It wasn't like swing and miss stuff, but he filled the zone, made them put the ball in play, made some big pitches when he needed to.
Right.
He established his fastball in the zone and then threw his secondary pitches off of that. Very impressed.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And he's not needing the overpowering velocity that he had last year because he was sitting at 94 in his fastball, which is down from 96 where he was last year. And he still looks really comfortable out there. I think he had composure as the game went on, which was important to me because, that 5th and 6th inning is where we've seen him fall apart so many times. And to go 6 up, 6 down in those 2 innings was great. I know he's facing, the Marlins twice in a row, which is a tougher thing to do when the lineup is familiar with you after that first start. But he really only used 3 pitches. We didn't see the curveball very much. He was fastball, slider, change, and he looked great out there.
He only threw 1 curveball.
Just the one.
It was the last pitch of the game to get a big strikeout of Jazz.
It's a good spot to throw it.
Yeah, that's what he talks about. So you said he looked poised out there, and he did. That was the biggest takeaway for me. I think the velocity will come back up to about average 96, but I don't think he needs it. And I think he's pitching well enough without it. But it would be nice for him to be able to reach back when he needs to go to the fastball and dip back into that velocity. But he looked in control on the mound the entire time, which was a big cry from where he was at points in spring training.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to see from a young pitcher, to develop confidence on the mound and security in what they're doing. Again, big shout out to Tomas Nido, who's, Omar Narvaez, I've really liked the way he fit in early. I really love the way he's handled the pitching staff.
Yeah.
Watching him catch, he's the kind of guy that I would love to throw to, because you can tell he's done his homework, and he'll, like, when he's setting up, he'll like give you little gestures and signals like, hey, really confident, like boosting. So he's going to be a bigger absence, I think, than what we thought. But Nito's filled in great. He knows this pitching staff. This is where, there's a lot of calls, including from myself, where we want Alvarez to be in the lineup.
Right.
But number one is being able to handle this pitching staff. And I think Nito's going to carry the bulk and let Alvarez, unless he starts going off, they're gonna find him a way.
I mean, I think we know what we're gonna get offensively from Nido at this point in his career, but I think the more important piece is exactly what you said, because this starting rotation is what is built to succeed on this team, and it hasn't so far. And we need them to be stable as we go through the motions of the season. The Mets are probably going to get their toughest challenge yet with the Padres coming to town for their next series, and I expect Nido to probably get the bulk of playing time in that series as well, even though I kind of feel similarly to you that we should give Alvarez as much run as we can, even if he's a DH against lefties, whatever. But Nido looked really comfortable with Kodai Senga again, which was nice. Senga looked great, even better than his first start, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I know, and it's the same thing, facing the same team twice in a row, but home crowd didn't faze him at all in that first inning. I don't think his legs were ghosts again, which was nice. And,
I like his sense
just looked
of humor.
good. Had a lot of zip.
Yeah. You mentioned it with Megill facing the same team the second time. Anytime a hitter has seen you, it's an advantage to the hitter because he's seen the ball come out of your hand more. Yep. He sees the shape of your breaking balls. Megill did a good job of switching up his pitch mix. I think it was more not just because he's facing the same team, but because he was more comfortable throwing the way he did the second time.
Right.
But we get into Kodai.
Yeah.
Kodai looked great. He gave up 2 singles in the first, got into a little bit of a jam, but he pitched his way out, looked fantastic.
And I thought it was really interesting because we saw him, we saw him lean on his signature pitch in his first start because he needed to find something. He was able to find the ghost fork and then really cruise throughout the rest of the start. This time, I think he looked more comfortable because he was spreading out his pitch mix like really evenly outside of his four-seamer. He was 18 sweepers, 16 cutters, and then 16 forkballs. Obviously, most of the whiffs came on the ghost fork because that's pretty natural at this point, but still 6 whiffs on his four-seam. He maxed out at 98 on his four-seamer as well, so I think he felt a little bit of the home crowd adrenaline.
That maxed out 99 in Miami.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I didn't have that in my book. So
He throws hard.
And I mentioned this to you before we started going, but I don't know if this was a happy accident or the Mets just set it up well, but Kodai has a nice month of April based on the way that the rotation's laid out. He's going to miss the Padres this series, and he's going to get the A's after in the Coliseum. So I think they're easing him in really well with these 2 Marlins starts. Then he has the A's after that. He'll probably get a bigger challenge, either facing, I think, the Dodgers or the Giants the week after.
Yeah, I think it's a happy accident. Probably not, because with Buck Showalter and
he's always got to play.
These guys don't have accidents for the most part when it comes to planning. But it is a good thing for him to get his feet wet, get a good leap moving forward, and they get a sense that he can handle, the rigors of being a major league pitcher. So,
and then there was one starting pitching performance that bears some attention, even though for the wrong reasons, and that was Carlos Carrasco, who looked slow on his fastball again, kind of never really got to settle in fully after a shaky first inning, and then didn't complete 5 innings again here. I know it's only 2 starts, we have a really small sample size like you said before, but it is cause for concern, I think, at this point that Cookie, we haven't seen him really blow anyone away. His breaking pitches don't really have the zip that we kind of saw in the middle of last year. How worried are you on a scale of 1 to 10 for Carlos Carrasco right now?
10 being
get him out of here, scared, doesn't have it anymore.
4.5. So I am concerned. Okay. Only in the context that if the other spots in the rotation were cruising, if Max was Max, if Verlander was back, with Quintana being gone, so Peterson is still, worried in the sense that there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to perform fast because of the instability of everybody else. So I think he'll be fine. I really do. He hasn't had the control of his changeup, his split change, his ghost fork.
You will.
Yeah. His Phantasma Tenador, I think something like that. But he doesn't – there's just not as much breathing room for him to
right.
If you stumble out of the gate, there's the magnifying glass is right on him right now. I do think he'll be fine, but if he has another hiccup, if he's not as sharp again, it's the pressure's gonna be even more on him. But
yeah, I think so too. And it's there's still that pitcher in there that we saw last year that was honestly really good for the Mets and he was very much needed for the Mets.
He was the pulse, the stable force that was the whole season. He was what Quintana was going to be this year. That's what he was last year. Right. He was just 2 times through the lineup. I'm going to get you some strikeouts. We're going to, I'm going to give up 0 to 3 runs and give you guys a chance to win. And so he's had a few hiccups with the home runs and he's just not getting the swings and misses in a smaller sample size than you were hoping for. Again, it's early.
Yeah.
So it just there's pressure on him for real to start performing. The 3rd time through, if it's the same and he hasn't made any bit of progress, then the concern will be. I'd say I have an eye on if he looks better.
You're looking in the magnifying glass.
Yeah, I'm going to be paying attention. Gotcha. I always pay attention, but I'm going to be like, all right, he needs to take a step forward.
Yeah. I think something that got a little swept under the rug was Steven Nagosic. A little golf clap for him.
I was going to mention it, so I'm glad you did.
There you go. He looked really good yesterday. We needed him because I think, the bullpen did a pretty solid job this weekend outside of a little Dennis Santana hiccup. David Robertson looks really good. John Curtis looks really good.
John Curtis is great.
Just that one home run he let up, I think, in game 2. And then Steven Nagosic, we kind of needed him because I don't know what exactly we're getting out of Max Scherzer tonight and the following starters in the next games, but we're going to need our best guys. And I think 3 1/3 from him after Cookie couldn't get it done was huge.
He's looked fantastic all season.
Yeah.
He's finally out of options, and so he didn't get optioned down after that because this is what he did all last year. He would have been sent out. So good for him. He did save the bullpen, saved the possibility of the Mets having some issues with the back end of their bullpen if the game's on the line. So, yeah, just a terrific performance, something under the radar. I'm glad you mentioned it.
So how are we feeling about the offense after this series where, last series in Milwaukee, we were shut out in 2 games, put out a good effort against Corbin Burns in the finale. They put up 9 in the first game, 5 in the second game, and then 2 in the last game. The runners in scoring position numbers aren't amazing from this series, but they were able to get it done, get out a series win. What is your temperature right now with this Mets offense?
I think they're fine. It's Pete Alonso has been doing unbelievable. Yeah. So shout out to him in the middle of the order. I thought Lindor looked great up until this series a little bit. He struck out a bunch.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not worried about him. I think he's going to be great. It was really nice to see Eduardo Escobar kind of break out a little bit because he hit the ball really well this series. That one particular game where he hit the home run, he got robbed twice. Well, he got robbed in the first hit. That game. Almost got a homer in the second one, and then if that third one didn't go, like, that would have been...
I mean, we saw him show some emotion after the fly out to the warning track, because I get it. We couldn't really get anything to go for him, and that was feeling like it was going to be the game, so thankfully he got that one over the fence. I'm glad you mentioned Lindor, because I think it was Gary that brought up a really good point in the last game, that Lindor's chase rate is way down this year comparatively to last year. So his walks are up, but he did strike out a lot more in this series. I think he was getting fooled a little bit more, and those numbers have kind of balanced out now. Game 2, or it was the home opener actually, that he hit the home run. That was a nice at-bat there. But yeah, the story is really Pete Alonso, who's kind of doing his thing and just carrying the Mets offense right now, providing all the firepower. 11 RBI in the season already, 5 home runs. I'm sure the other guys will come around and start picking up the weight, but if you go on their page right now and you look at the numbers, it is Pete Alonso and then it's everybody else.
I love the way Pete's doing it too. That at bat, who was pitching when he hit the home run?
Which one?
The lefty.
Was that? It wasn't Brozabon, right?
No, it was before Brozabon came in. I think it was.
It's a fun name to say.
They're wearing him out.
Yeah, I saw your tweet. Yeah.
They're wearing him. I was like, geez, again?
80 games this season.
He and like 120 innings from the bullpen.
Oh, Castano.
Yeah. So, no, was it? I don't remember. Anyway, Lindor was on first, and they came out and talked to him.
Castano was the 0-2 home run.
That's not the one. It was the 3-2 home run.
Gotcha.
The starter. I can't remember who it was.
I'll get you his name.
But it was an at-bat where... Trevor Rogers. And so he was really patient and throughout that whole at-bat. He didn't chase. He understood that they're like, all right, there's 2 outs. We're not going to let Pete Alonso beat us. They even had a pitcher, or like the pitching coach came out, and it was basically like, don't do anything stupid. But he got ahead. You can tell Pete had an idea of what he was looking for. He was looking for a changeup that didn't get executed. He took a really good changeup off the plate away for ball 3, and then he hung one, and Pete deposited it into the stands. The kid made an amazing catch.
I didn't see the catch.
You should look it up because it was the kid was fired up, but it was just a beautiful at bat. He's taking his walks. He's not pressing, trying to make things happen. He's letting things come to him and using his power as a big, strong guy to drive the ball out of the ballpark when they make a mistake.
Totally. Was this when the kid reached over the fence a little bit? Because I think I remember that.
Well, there was a little kid that caught the ball. Yeah. It was a laser at him, and he just went bananas.
That's a tough one to catch.
It was. Yeah. If you don't, that's going to hurt.
Dead center. It's going to hurt if you don't catch it. Yeah, man, he looked great this whole series.
I think I'm mixing a couple of home runs there, but that's fine.
That's a nice thing, though. There was a lot of home runs this series,
Alonso's
which has not been the case in prior series. The Mets got 3 in that first game, a couple in the second game, which was good. They just couldn't really get the big hit in that last game there. Had plenty of runners on, which is kind of the Mets story of late. They're always threatening. They just need to start getting that big hit going. But a lot more strikeouts than I think we're accustomed to seeing from this Mets lineup. They had 12 in the game yesterday, including 3 from Lindor when he went 0 for 5. So that's something that's a little cause for concern. But like we said before, really small sample size. It's kind of, we're at the point where we have to overreact to these things or else there's nothing really to talk about if we're being honest. But that's the main takeaway I had. Everyone's getting on base, but, no big hits yet.
That's it. They're getting on base. They're doing what their offensive DNA is, and they're making pitchers work. They're making them throw strikes. They're getting guys into scoring position, and then it's usually they capitalize, and they haven't been on a regular clip. So it's hard. Hitting a baseball is hard.
So I've heard.
Yes. So as you know, hitting a blitz ball is pretty hard too.
It's even harder, actually. No, it's not true. Apple of our eye?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's do it, Jack. You got the sound? Yeah. All right, we got actually a nice competition nice few lines here. I think last time it was kind of Alonso and Lindor felt like the obvious picks. Now we got some starting pitchers in the mix. McNeil had a nice series. Canna quietly had a nice series too. 4 for 10, a couple doubles. Who you got your eye on?
The apple of my eye is the right fielder, and it's Starling Marte.
Wow, okay.
Starling Marte. He's 3 for 8, 2 runs scored, a double, a homer, an RBI, 2 walks, and a stolen base. Is that he only had the 1 stolen base in the series?
I believe just the one. Let's check it out.
I am concerned about the neck moving forward because he has been incredible hitting behind Nimmo.
Yeah.
Just stellar. He looks great at the plate. He hasn't done too much. You can tell he has an idea of what he's doing, and it's impressive this early in the season to have a polished approach and being able to execute, because it's the first time you're seeing regular pitches, guys when it matters. For him to come out and do what he's done, it just sets the tone for the Mets. Nimmo getting on base and then him being able to move him around.
Yep.
And I just love watching him play. He's so dynamic. The speed, the arm, his ability to just pop a homer when he wants to, very impressive. So Starling Marte is the apple of my eye.
I like that pick. I wasn't actually expecting that pick.
You thought I would go one of the starters?
I think so.
Yeah.
I thought you would. Marte looks great. He looks really confident on the base paths, which is cool. I mean, he's on pace for like a 50 stolen base season right now, which is incredible. And, he picked his spot in the first inning. I think he caught the Marlins sleeping a little bit in that third game. Stole third, but unfortunately that's why he left the game, because I think he caught his head into Gene Segura's knee there. Hopefully he'll be okay. Hopefully we see him batting tonight and no serious injury there. And you kind of leave me with a tougher decision now, because do I be that guy and pick Pete Alonso twice in a row? Do I pick one of the starters but not the other because they both did great? Do I pick Brandon Nimmo, who went 0 for 10 but had 4 walks and a hit by pitch? It's very compelling here. I think I'm going to go with the apple to Tyler Megill for me.
Okay.
Megill. Obviously a little biased because, I root for this guy extra hard. But I gave it to Senga the first series. I'm going to give it to Megill here because that was an important game. Mets,
it was.
The Mets have a lineage of winning their home openers, winning on opening day, all that. And Tyler Megill, who was supposed to be the Syracuse Mets number 1, is now looking like the New York Mets number 3, number 4. He's looked really great so far this season. And he was facing a Marlins team that honestly hit him kind of well in that first start. He had some great defense behind him, especially the Lindor play to end the afternoon and save a couple runs. This time he looked way more dominant. He was yielding a lot of soft contact, playing into that defense again, but looked poised, looked in control, especially after that shaky 4th inning, and finished strong. And I think that was important because the Mets got pretty poor starting pitching in all 3 games in Milwaukee and kind of needed a respite for their bullpen. They needed a clean afternoon, especially when they finally started scoring some runs with all those walks. Megill gave them exactly what they needed. It was a breath of fresh air. He's going to get the apple of my eye.
I like it. The line isn't as impressive as what it felt like because of the need for him to just give you some quality innings, to give the team some breathing room. Pete Alonso, that's a big upset, him not getting it.
2 home runs, 5 RBIs. Sorry, no apple for you.
That's okay. You didn't want to do it back to back. That's fine. But
maybe we'll give him like audio jacks like Granny Smith apple, something like that.
Nice, attaboy Jack.
A mini apple.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so those are the apples. There is still things to talk about, I think. Alvarez is someone we actually haven't really talked about at all to this point. I thought he looked good in the game. He had really nice frames in Game 3. He had the RBI single in that first at-bat. Where are you at right now? Because I was a little disappointed we didn't see him in Game 1 or Game 2. I understand him not getting the Senga start because that's brand new pitcher, goes to fork, all that stuff. But I would like to not see him, get benched twice a series. But maybe that's just me.
I'm the same way. Yeah. I want to see him. I want to see his bat in the lineup. Yeah. That's the thing for me. It's tough though because he can't catch Senga unless he starts catching him in his bullpen sessions, which is rare, especially during the season. But he needs to get to work. He's 21.
Yep.
Go get those reps. Nito needs to lead this team from behind the plate, but Francisco Alvarez's bat could be such a difference maker in a lineup that needs some extra thump. And if he's here, might as well see what he's got. I would like him to play at least 2 out of 3 somewhere.
Well, I mean, we have this DH spot, which has kind of been floating around. We saw Alonso fall in there, kind of go to first base. Pham has gotten some playing time against lefties. It felt like a miss to me to not play him against Trevor Rogers, who, has that changeup that misses sometimes that I think is a pitch Alvarez could crush if he gets it. And we're in the spot where we kind of need to throw Alvarez into the pool and let him learn how to swim. Because I think, he had a couple bad swings, especially in the first at-bat. I think he was, pushing for a moment and then settled in, was able to find his pitch. But if you're in a scenario where you're only playing him once every turn of the rotation, he's not going to get acclimated as quickly as you want him to. So I think, giving him some spots against lefties might not be a bad idea. I know it's scary when you put both your catchers in the lineup. But yeah, I don't know, man. Playing him once in the series didn't sit totally right with me.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen him play the first day.
Yeah.
Maybe even catch the first game. But it is what it is, man. I like you put Tommy Pham in there. He hit a homer off Rogers in the opening series. He actually played really well. So I understand, you promised this guy's at-bats when you signed him. I get it. But Francisco Alvarez has the ability to be a guy, to be a dog, to carry this lineup. He's got the skill set that could carry your team for a month. So it's hard to see that on the bench, even though he might not be ready for regular playing time behind the dish. You have him on the team. I'd like to see him get some use because, like you said, the runners in scoring position hitting hasn't come, and that's going to be a concern if they can't drive those runners in. But he could do a Pete Alonso and just, I don't need people on base or who cares if they can't shift. I'm just going to hit the ball into the seats. So
yeah, and I mean, this is something we can give time to. Like, let somebody get hot, let somebody else click behind Pete Alonso, and then suddenly the lineup looks much better than it did before. One thing we don't have as much time for is something I alluded to before, because Justin Verlander is hopefully coming back on the hill very, very soon.
I just want to touch on Alvarez just right before we get to Verlander. So Narvaez is down 8 to 9 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that is what it is. But this is a time for Alvarez to get some at-bats, knowing that he doesn't have to be amazing in, 25 at-bats. If you give him 2 months worth of at-bats, it might let him take a deep breath and calm.
Yeah.
And he doesn't feel the pressure every single time a pitch is thrown to do something amazing. If he knew he was going to get 2 months worth of at-bats, maybe he relaxes and gets comfortable in the big leagues. I think it would help. But there's some smart people in there making decisions, and there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with if pitchers are comfortable throwing to him. It may or may not be, but I know Nito is very good back there.
Right.
And if he's going to learn from somebody in between innings, whatever the case may be, I just want to see his bat in the lineup.
I will say, when Alvarez was back there and Carrasco was hitting his spots, a lot of those pitch frames looked great. I thought he looked comfortable out there. I thought this was if you were going to start him in Game 3, this was a good starter for him to go first with, because Cookie's not going to overpower anybody. He's got a very clear pitch mix. He's been in the game for a while. Everybody kind of knows what they're getting with him at this point. And I think that was good for him to kind of work with a veteran pitcher, get himself acclimated. Whereas even if he's caught Megill and Peterson before, it kind of helps to have somebody else on the other end of the battery that's been there before.
Yeah. Senga would be maybe the worst case scenario, even though he's great at blocking the ball. Nito's so good at picking and
Senga
finesse.
did spike a lot of pitches that game, too.
And he's going to every single time. Right. Plus, he has 99 in the mix, and sometimes it sails. I'm going to want Nito catching Senga.
Right. That I'm okay with. That I totally get.
But you can mix him in. Scherzer can call his own game. He can throw the pitch com on. All I want to do is get this kid in the lineup because he could make a difference. Yes. He could take some pressure off of some guys to have to produce because he's just dynamic. That's all I want to say. That's it.
Totally. Got to give it its fair due. But what do you think of this rotation going forward? I think it's worth talking about. We're going to get a very important David Peterson start in the second game of the series, which we'll get to in a little bit. Cookie, we've seen him now for 2 starts, and then Tyler Megill, who I just gave my apple to and has looked great against the Marlins twice in a row. These are kind of the 3 guys that we have to talk about when we're talking about what does the rotation look like when JV is finally here.
Yeah, so Scherzer has been great except for the 6th inning, basically. Right. I'm not worried about him. A lot of people are. because he's kind of tired himself out in the sixth inning.
Yeah.
Not worried. What I've seen from him leading up to that moment, he's looked sharp, swing and miss stuff. I'm not worried. If he has another blow up in the sixth inning, then my concern will come in.
Yeah.
But I think he makes the adjustments. He's been doing it his entire Hall of Fame career.
Right.
Again, not worried about him, even though his sixth inning has put extra pressure on David Peterson.
Right.
I am concerned about David Peterson in the short term, again, because of the instability in this. It's the same way for Megill, that we were like, man, we need you. We need Peterson to be able to throw his fastball for strikes.
Yeah.
That's the key for him. He's had sporadic control kind of throughout his career. Last year, he was really good at coming in and being able to spot that fastball. I think he'll make the adjustments. I love him in the long term.
Yeah.
I think he's deserves to be in the rotation all year. I think he's, even if it goes poor again, I think he earned a time or two through the rotation to kind of figure it out. But the pressure's on. People are watching. He needs to throw more strikes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the base runners for me with Peterson. He has a 2.1 whip right now, which is not where you want to be at all. 9 innings, 13 hits, 6 walks. So it hasn't only been the walks. It's when he's in the zone, he's getting hit. I don't know.
It's because he's fallen behind,
right, and
he has to throw it over the heart of the plate. I think again, it was for Megill last year. It was fastball command. That's the bread and butter for every pitcher. Being able to put your fastball, because if the barrel gets to a fastball, they're going to put it for damage.
Right.
And if you can't get ahead, then your changeup, your slider becomes almost obsolete, because they don't have to swing at it. They don't have to trust that it's in the zone, because even if you do throw it for a strike, they're like, oh, well, he'll have to do it 2 more times. So it all starts with David Peterson being able to work ahead and throw a fastball in the zone on a corner on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think his game 2 against the Padres is going to be a start that we should definitely take a really close look at to see if any changes have been made, or if his approach is different at all, because it's getting dark quickly with this Mets rotation.
He's aware of, because I listened to his post game. He's like, I got to throw more strikes.
Yeah.
I got to be able to spot my fastball, and that's what Tyler Megill said in his post game. They're like, what was it? He's like, I threw my fastball for strikes more often, and allowed him to go about his game plan versus always working behind. So that's the key. Peterson knows it. Can he make the adjustment? I think he does, but they need him to do it.
Yeah, and it's going to be the toughest lineup yet in this matchup with the Padres as they come to town after they took 2 of 3 at Truist in Atlanta against the Braves. They looked really, really good. Mets are definitely getting their toughest team of the season. You want to tell me who's going head-to-head?
I do. Looking ahead, San Diego series, a 3-game set. Game 1, it's a good one, a battle of the old men, some gray heads. Max Scherzer, 1-1 with a 6.35, looking to solidify that 6th inning against Yu Darvish, who's 0-0 with a 1.8 ERA. He's looked really good. It's a rematch of the wild card Game 1 where the Padres won 7-1.
Bad memories.
Nelson Cruz, who was hot in Atlanta, is 10 for 27 with a home run against Scherzer. Starling Marte, hopefully his next better, is 7 for 17 with a homer against Darvish. I like that matchup. It's going to be one I pay attention to. Darvish versus the Mets last year, he had 3 games started, went 3-0, 21 innings pitched, only 2 earned runs and 12 hits, 1 walk, and 19 strikeouts. He's really liked facing the Mets. Let's hope that recipe has switched. Game 2, the start we were talking about with David Peterson, who is 0-1 with a 6, going against Ryan Weathers, who's 0-0 with a 3.6. Combined, the Mets haven't really seen him very much. They're 0-3 against him. Marte, Escobar, LeCastro all have 1 at-bat. Padres are combined 2 for 17 against Peterson, so not a lot of familiarity on either side. Weathers has made 2 starts since the end of 21. David Peterson has allowed 13 hits and 6 walks. That's an over 2 whip that you mentioned earlier in 9 innings this year. Let's see if he can bounce back and return to form. Game 3, Tyler Megill, big drip, looking great after 2 starts. He's 2-0 with a 1.64 ERA against Blake Snell, a lefty coming in. He's 0-1 with a 7.88 ERA. Megill's never faced the Padres. Nelson Cruz has faced him, being a Nationals, 1 for 4. Juan Soto, 1 for 6, both with homers. Blake Snell versus the Mets in last year, 3 games, he was the other way to the Yu Darvish. He's 1-2 with 12 and a third innings pitched, 6 earned runs on 15 hits, 10 walks, and only 14 Ks. A lot of swing and miss, a lot of miss the zone. That is a recipe for success if you are the New York Mets, and that is the 3-game set.
Nicely done. It's even better in person, you know? It really is. Yeah, a lot to highlight in this series. It's going to be a fun one for sure. Hopefully the Mets can get a little bit of redemption against the Padres. It is that Game 1 rematch in the first game tonight, Scherzer and Darvish. Hopefully Scherzer can, get some redemption for himself because he was the big story in that Game 1 loss. Yu Darvish, I don't know what it is that he has against the Mets, but he looks nasty. Sharp against them all the time. And yeah, when you mentioned we need Marte to be in that lineup tonight because I believe he missed Game 1 of the series and came back later in the wild card series, so we didn't get him. He was never 100%.
He was hurt. So, yeah. But this is the kind of a deeper seated issue, I think, for the Mets in general. So they're really good against teams that are afraid to throw strikes. They make you work, but it's guys like Yu Darvish who mix in a ton of pitches, who throw a ton of strikes that kind of give fits to the Mets. Guys like that have power stuff that aren't afraid to throw it in the zone. That has been the concern. It's your approach to grinding out at bats that's successful versus the long season. It's kind of that approach that overall you're gonna win a lot of ball games that way. It's the big game, the single game where you face a pitcher with power stuff that's not afraid to fill up the zone. Can you do damage? That's why a guy like Francisco Alvarez to me could be a difference maker. It's why a guy like Pete Alonso is so big in these games. And why he gets pitched around in these matchups because they know they can go in and fill the zone against the other guys and make him chase their pitches when Alonso steps up. So this is a big test for me. These guys that are I'm kind of sad that we don't get to see Joe Musgrove come back to New York. Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
I'm curious to see the reception he would get after the wild card showing that he did.
I have a hunch. What kind of reception.
I like both. I don't blame him because of what he did and how it went about it. Anyway, but yeah, this is the big concern. Can the Mets lineup handle a power pitcher that fills up the zone? So they're going to get a few of those guys. Spencer Strider kind of comes to mind. Max Fried comes to mind. Guys with, Fried doesn't strike out a ton of guys, but the Spencer Strider, I'm just going to throw my fastball, my slider.
He's got 2 pitches.
Yeah.
That's it.
So can their approach be effective against guys that fill the zone? So we'll see.
I think you nailed it because I think they'll do well in a start against a guy like Blake Snell where they can kind of be patient, work into their approach. And I think, we saw the offense come to life a little bit in the first 2 games of the series. Again, it was through a lot of walks, not a ton of hits with runners in scoring position, and then a few home runs, which was a nice sign. Can that momentum carry over into a red-hot Padres team that's playing really, really well right now, even with old man Nelson Cruz batting 4th, I think, DH and still hitting home runs? It's going to be a lot of fun. They'll be playing at Citi Field, so they'll have the home field advantage. And yeah, I got my eye on Game 2 for sure. David Peterson gets probably the easiest of the matchups here between Darvish and Snell with Ryan Weathers, a lefty pitcher there.
Yeah, I was going to mention he's another lefty, so right. Alvarez will have 2 chances to be in that lineup as DH if that's what you want to do.
I'm hoping the Mets give it a shot because I don't think it's a bad idea, especially if you want to get him in there against sort of a power guy like Ryan Weathers, who maybe isn't as experienced. It could be a good idea. I'm hoping we see Alvarez for, I'll say, 2 of these games.
Can we just give a nod to Seth Lugo as a starting pitcher for the Padres?
Former Met of the episode, we can say that.
He has shined in his first 2 starts of the year to a 2-0 record and a 1.38 ERA and 13 innings pitched. That means he's gone 6+.
I'm going to stand by the opinion that I think it still wouldn't have worked here if the Mets brought him back and said, "Hey, be a starting pitcher." I think it was a change of scenery thing.
Yep, I don't disagree with that. I think it was a fresh look.
He looks great
for everybody, and he looks great. I think it worked out for both. I'm happy for him.
Just twirling curveballs.
He did. He threw majority curveballs. It was like almost a 50-50
against
split.
a really good lineup. The first start, I think I was...
And a lineup that's seen him a bunch.
Yeah, I think it was the Rockies he faced in his first start, if I'm not mistaken. He went
got some
7
thump
innings,
in their lineup,
1 earned run, 7 strikeouts against the Rockies at Petco. And then he goes to Truist and he throws 6 innings on Sunday Night Baseball. Looks really good. So good for Seth. Hopefully he keeps it up.
We dodged a couple former Mets with Michael Wacha, too.
Michael Wacha also looked really good. The Padres might just be really good.
They are good. We knew it going in. They've got some very good talent. So
hopefully we can make some noise then. Make a statement.
This is our true test. We got swept by the Brewers, who are a solid team. Mm-hmm. This is a bigger step up. This is one of the teams that a lot of people pick to win the World Series. So
make a statement, boys. And I think that's all we got for our nice little in-person episode of Shea Station.
That was fun.
Jerry's going to be doing some other stuff later, guys. So tune in on JM Baseball soon. You might see his face. Who knows? Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.
Not to spoil. I've been teasing a lot this episode.
Well, that's what you do.
Big time teaser.
That's what I heard.
Big time teaser.
Let's go Mets.
Make a statement.
Spike for audio jack. Enjoy that one.
The only thing he'll have to edit on your audio.